Welcome back. You're watching Siasa Fiesta. I'm just coming through some of the pictures here that some of the people that are missing, the families are missing, have been sending, and they are crying that perhaps if they've been seen somewhere, we can report that to the police so that they might be rescued. They're suspected to have actually gone to Shakahola, and that is that fear and trepidation of most of the families right now, that maybe they're under a clod of soil buried underneath there. If I may just show you, first of all, if you could, maybe this is children, and there's this young girl as well. This is for the public interest, where the young girl and presumably the sister there also is missing. The family are crying. If they have been seen somewhere, you can report that to the nearest police station. There you go. If you've seen them somewhere, of course, this is a matter of national security right now. You can report that. We have these two gentlemen as well. These avid followers of Pastor Mackenzie. But the family suspects, and right now can just treat it as suspicion, that they are followers of a cult. Where could they be? These are the problem questions everyone are asking. Also, we have this lady as well who is missing. So if they've been seen somewhere, or if you've seen someone who's looking like her, you can report that to the nearest police station as well. This is a bit upside down. I'll try and rotate it, but this is the picture I'd shown you earlier, which is upside down as it is right now. And this is a controversial story that we continue to follow, and how the government was taken aback. Taifa Leo puts it very well. It says that Shakahola, serikali yazinduka usingizini. That is how it is today. Serikali yazinduka usingizini. And these are the reactions from the leaders as well, and what now they made as their pronouncement. Idara ya usalama ichukue hatua kali dhidi ya wahusika. Matukio ya Shakahola ni sawa na ugaidi. That's what the president said. We have also kuelekea mbele, tutahitaji sheria kali zaidi kudhibiti mabadi. And Wetangula said Paul Mackenzie na washirika wake wote lazima waadhibiwe. And also tunapanga kumfungulia Mackenzie shtaka la ugaidi. And Koome IG tutafanya uchunguzi wa kina na kuwachukulia hatua wahusika wote. Let me just hear from Isaac Mwaura, who at some point in the stream of time as well, he attended Bible school. He wanted to become a priest. So looking at this, do you regret or rue the day that you changed your mind to become a priest?
No,
because now you're in the schooling as well. Do you stand with some of the teachings that you've had from Pastor Mackenzie? And what does it do in terms of just the general hygiene of religion? Or the pseudo-religions as we have?
Thank you, Daba. I think the Bible is very clear about what we believe in. And it doesn't make it any less that when you believe and you follow through. Even in Parliament, we had the Bunge Fellowship. I mean, we even fellowship with my fellow CAS every Wednesday as well. We started that one as well. But the Bible is very clear. Do not murder. I mean, it's one of the 10 commandments, the Decalogue, as we call it. And also, if you look at the book of 1 John chapter 3, verses 1 to 18 there, you can see very clearly about Cain being given as a good example of a murderer who murdered his own brother Abel. And it's the same thing is repeated again in the book of Revelation chapter 21, that murderers will not see the kingdom of God. So this is actually murder. There is nowhere in the Bible that it teaches that you should starve yourself to death in the name of fasting, praying and fasting, so that then you can go and meet Jesus. I don't think so at all, because it's only God who gives life, and it's Him who takes life. You will even find on YouTube some of those things saying that if you die because this world is so hard, you will not be judged harshly. That's not true. It's actually one of the things that you need to know when you have false teachings is that you can actually tell that it's contrary to what the Bible teaches. Unfortunately, the people who are being targeted here are children. So, you know, children are vulnerable. They don't know much. They believe in their seniors. And that's where you could see that Mackenzie has succeeded, you know, a lot. But there's also a political question, Debal. And I really thank the Deputy Leader of Majority for elaborating this. There's a political question that we politicians or leaders must also agree. The reason why we don't go after these churches, and Aisha Juma really be commended, is because there is an unholy alliance between politicians and the church.
Yes.
Because the church gives politicians legitimacy before their own congregants. Because what I as a politician want is a self-mobilized audience. You find it very easily in church. So when that preacher man is preaching contrary, your aim and target would be the votes. And also, there was a time Gedhu Muigai had come up with regulations about the church. I spoke about it and I faced a backlash. The four of us will confess because we have looked for votes and looked for this. You see, some of these people will not even allow you to go before their congregation before you give something. I remember, I don't want to mention the church because it's not the church, but when I was campaigning to be MP for Ruiru, I was approached in advance to give some 5,000 shillings so that the pastor could allow me to speak, you know, before the congregation. I refused because my conscience could not allow. And sure enough, I went there and I was disallowed from talking. I was just told to raise my hand. And then the accusation was that I had come late. Then I said, because sometimes we also go from one church to another to cover as much ground as possible, that next time I'll go there early. And the same thing happened, and the church protested, and they allowed me to speak. But you get that kind of thing, you know, people who are promising you success, laying hands on you, telling you how you are going to succeed. The moment you finish that, your competitor comes and they also lay hands on you. I think, honestly, you know, we are also duped. Let's also accept, and because we are yearning for this power, for this opportunity to serve, possibly, we really believe, and we are looking for the votes. But chances that if you look carefully, and I hope my colleagues can also comment here, you really don't get as much votes as those, because it's nobody really, even the congregants can tell, it's a game, because if you come today and then next Sunday is your competitor, then another one, then really, by the end of the day, it is an individual who will make their choice. And they can see through the lies. And also, the populace has also learned what we want, including these preacher men and women. So they'll be there with their supernormal kind of dressing, with a big, you know, necklace there with a golden, you know, cross, you know, speaking gibberish. Sorry to say this, but there are also no standards. Anybody can stand today and claim to be a preacher man with and tengeneza some mabati structure and ask for 10%, and the next time they're even building malls. We've seen them. We've seen them. And it's high time, because they cannot self-regulate. Now, before, we had formal churches under NCCK. But I think now the evangelicals are more. You see, you can have a Standard 7 dropout. All of a sudden, they become a preacher man. In fact, we joke. They just go and use the material from the curtain and make a very good suit with pointed shoes and a huge upward-looking, and then they become, and we do not refuse that people are charismatic and they are gifted, but there is a borderline as well. Yeah, it's somebody who just gives you all those nice prophecies, then the next time they say, now give me something. Basically, that's what they're doing. So I think, Debal, yes, I wanted to be a preacher man. I've gone to theological college at Presbyterian University. We still pray, and I'm sure even my colleagues here do so. But there's of course, a cult. And a cult, if you allow me to speak a little bit more on that one, even the devil turns himself as an angel of light. So just because somebody is shouting, Yesu, I don't know what, it's not true. Because when Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, he was not fasting to die. You know, and people should also remember, after he fasted, he was still tempted, being told that he will be given the whole of the world, because at that point you're vulnerable. So I think it is wrong. We need to condemn this, and it is high time. I think the Attorney General, J.B. Muturi, and Parliament should actually propose some kind of regulation of these churches. What constitutes what is the threshold of being a pastor? It may not be popular. They may say there's freedom of religion, But of course, by the end of the day, when you start seeing this kind of behaviors, it becomes an issue. And I'm sure this is just one of them because of the fact that he's the one on the spotlight. If people can confess the kind of things that they go in this along in these churches, I mean, it will be such a big story. There were even some pastors that were being accused of groping women, you know, in the name of that they are blessing them. There are even those, you remember the canyaris of potassium permanganate,
yes,
and fake miracles, you know, those kind of things. So I think it is time we did so, but we should not also wholesomely condemn the church, because that's not the case. You have to look at it from the extremities and, of course, ensure that you are addressing the real problem rather than just getting an opportunity to bust the church for political expediency, for example, or for other personal reasons.
Thank you. Yes. Let me come to Dr. Makali here because, first of all, I've been quite unfair to him. He came a bit early, but I can see he's a man who is self-effacing, very humble. Thank you very much, and forgive me for that as well.
The future governor of Kitui.
Yeah, the future governor of Kitui. We had to begin with Owen, knowing that now he's the one from Kilifi as well. But you've been following this as well, and we can see. I wanted just to begin from...
probably comes from his constituency.
Yes, probably. this was the migration, because even the wife is called Mwikamba. Yeah. So I don't know if Mwikamba is a nickname or maybe it's a name as well. Yeah, but let's just begin from your own perspective. You can tell us in a broader perspective what you have gleaned so far and how we should move forward.
Okay, thank you, Debor. I think it's good that you're having us today with my colleagues here. It's actually a very sad day for all of us as Kenyans. We are all shocked with what we are seeing in the country. But I want to start by saying, Debal, that because most of us are Christians, and we've come through all the way from the Sunday school level to where we are today. And what I know is the preaching I've gone through since I was a very small boy is the God we worship is God of love, is God of peace, is a very merciful God, and He will always make sure that those who believe in Him will always be leaders but not to be led. That's what the Bible says. So with that background, Debal, what we are seeing, I think as Kenyans, even though we are saying maybe the police, the DCI, the NIS, I think we are all to blame. We are actually all guilty as charged, all of us as Kenyans. Because, Debal, if you see what has been happening, and listening to my friend, the Deputy Majority Leader, you know, it's obvious that this gentleman called Mackenzie, and I want to confirm that he comes from our region.
He comes from your region.
Even though he might have migrated to coast. But from the name, it's obvious he's one of our own. And generally, we are very religious ourselves as a community. We take religion very serious. So what has happened is, in an ideal situation, Debal, you know, in a situation where the systems work, there is no way Mackenzie would have done what he has done without Kenyans in our way. If our systems were working as expected, what am I saying? In most areas, you have what we call the neighborhood networks, where you will get to know who is your neighbor, what do they do. Then you have the Nyumba Kumi initiative. You have the village elders. You have the sub-chief, the chief coming all the way to the top. And I'm telling you, there is no way that system would have not functioned in this area. So what has happened, in that process of that information flow, somebody must have looked the other side. Somebody somewhere must have looked the other side. Because you can't tell me, Mackenzie has been in this area for over 20 years, all these things have been happening, and nobody knew what was happening, including us who are politicians. I can tell you, the area member of parliament there, the MCR there, they are aware of this. This has been happening. But what have they done? To make sure that you continue getting your votes. Because some of these charges are very, very, very effective when it comes to campaigns. You don't want to come out clearly as CS Juma came out sometime. And I think that's why I'm saying all of us, we are good to some extent. But in terms of level of accountability, I think then the security system has failed the country. You can't tell me this has been happening when the NIS is in place, when the DCI is in place, when we have the now called the GAO, the National Government Administration Process, was in place. What we are seeing is a breakdown of our security system. And I think really we need to look back and say, when did the rain start beating us? Because obviously, when you look at this country and the system of the NIS, look at what is happening now currently. Our security is all over the place when we talk about demonstrations, people are out there, you will find the security is mobilized to make sure that nobody goes out to the street to demonstrate, even though it's a constitutional provision. But such a serious matter like this, Dibao, we've all missed it. So we're just saying, as Kenyans, there are things we must get right. One thing is we're talking about self-regulation, and at some point, as a country, we're thinking, do we regulate the churches, or do we allow self-regulation? I think after debating for some time, we agreed that self-regulation is good for them. Look at what has happened now, that the so-called churches are not able to regulate themselves. And for me, I have one belief. About today, if you wanted to become a doctor in this country, there's a minimum requirement, academic requirement, that you must have this. If you wanted to become an engineer, there's a minimum requirement. Even a simple thing like a clinical officer, if you are to be called a clinical officer, there is a requirement that you must meet this. How come we don't have any minimum requirements for people who want to become pastors, priests, and all that? And I think that's the starting point. I've seen in my village, because we have so many churches, and even in my constituency, people just get out of school. After you marry, you say, I'm the pastor, and my wife is the co-pastor. You start a church, and within a very short time, the place is packed.
You become a bishop.
And very soon, I have so many bishops, like I've lost count of them in my constituency. I have so many bishops, I've lost count of them. So everybody's a bishop. and you know you are a bishop with only one church. You're not a bishop with a branches of churches. So I think we have accepted that, let it be like that. But to me, the basic principle, Dibalo, whether you are in the church, whether you are in the out there in the government, or whether you are just a normal Kenyan, we need an accountability framework for everybody. None of us should not be accountable. So I imagine there must be a way that even the pastors are accountable to the people they are preaching to. At one point, I was actually the vice chair of one of my local church council, and we had a very debate. We were debating. People are tithing, people are giving offerings, and the money is big money. And the question is, do we need to come out every year and provide a financial report like the companies do to the people who give us the money, because God does not need money? And I could see it's a bit of resistance, but at the end of the day, we forced that so that every year we would come through the church, the general plenary, and say, this year you gave us this much in terms of tithe, you gave this much in terms of offerings, and these are the programs we have used this money to undertake as a church. Because you're supposed to be preaching, you're supposed to take the gospel out there to those who have not been reached. So this money is for that purpose. And you must tell them, how much have we gone out there to preach the word of God? And so I'm saying, there must be accountability even when you are the bishop. You must be accountable to the people who are and that's what is missing in these churches. We don't have an accountability framework, so people can do what they want.
But is it the implementation of the law or regulations for that part? Because we have clerics who are required to have the minimum. Bare minimum. Hold a certificate from an accredited theological institution.
Tom and Dick. For now, every Tom and Dick can become a bishop. That's what we are saying. And actually in mainstream churches, like the Catholic, like the African Inland Church where I belong, for you to become a bishop, it takes time. It's a process. You can't be, even the Bible says, let not give leadership to those to new convertees in churches, because these are people who are likely to slide back. So for you to be a leader in church, you need to be very well grounded. People must have, you must have gone through some teachings. People must have be convinced that you believe in the word. And you know, this is what we are seeing. We have people who are coming, and these are the new convertees. And when they come, because they're not well grounded, when they come and see money, they see beautiful women in church, they get lost. So they stop preaching the word and start preaching things like what Mackenzie is preaching, saying that education is not necessary. Dibal, when you listen to Mackenzie, and you have said you have listened to his YouTubes, and does it look to you, appear to you like that guy is not educated? He's very well educated. Yes. Even the way he presents himself, he's educated. How come he's educated and he's able to preach and he's telling our children that they should not be educated? These are the kind of things we are saying. These are the wrong things in this country, and we really need all of us. Let's not leave this to the government.
Yes.
I don't want us to say leave this to NIS, DCI. Let's all of us as a country, because we can't regulate morals and things like so. Let's as a country all come forward and say what is good for this country. And if you see something happening which is not good for the country, let's not keep quiet. Me as a politician, let me be ready that I lose the votes, but then we have a country. Let me lose the votes, and then we have children who have been brought up in the way it should be. But not to say that because this charge as a congregation of 2,000, if I get these votes, then I will be the next MP, or I will be what? And on that side, then I look the other side. The problem here is looking the other side. The other problem we have, Dibao, which you must address, and I'm happy we are all leaders here, is the issue of greed. You know, most of us in this country, even you look at the way these churches are structured, you really, you know, the God we worship is not God who cares about prosperity. And actually we are told all these things, we leave them behind here. But you see, the gospel we are preaching is gospel where we are telling the poor that if you come to my church, in 2 years, you'll be driving a car if you are walking today. So you see, that gospel of prosperity. That you know who would not dare to follow that faith, that I am just walk from my house, I become now part of the Baus church, and in 2 years,
you get
I've been driving a new car. You can imagine the motivation. So, and you have seen a whole air hostess here. Imagine selling a plot for 7 million and taking it to Mackenzie, handing over. This is my plot. Go with it. What do you want to do with the
800 acres.
So these are the things.
This is questionable, and it's also consternating that the government cannot establish, you know, at a snap of a finger, if this land belongs to Mackenzie. I thought we have a digitized register where we can actually just go to the, you know, we key in the details and, you know, we can see who owns 800 acres in Kilifi, in Shakahola forest.
Let me say this, Dibal. This story is actually a reflection of where we are as a country. And I think all of us have really stated what it is. The Societies Act, under which most of these churches were registered, is outdated. Like all of us have been saying, we must have regulations, we must have order, we must have, without infringing on the rights of the churches. For example, Dibal, religion talks about integrity. Why do churches find it difficult to actually do audited reports by independent auditors explaining to the Christians how they raised the money and what the money did? If the church agrees that money is made from tithe and it is taken by the priests can produce that in their constitution and then table it to their parishioners so that when the money comes, everybody knows. Or when you go to such a church, you know, you go there and give the tithe, you know what the tithe is going to do. There's nothing wrong with being open. So where we are, and I listened carefully to what Honorable Mwaura said, we just may have to blame ourselves, all of us. Dibal, today, if you look at even DCI, right, and the police network of keeping records, today if I asked you how many people who are missing persons report, how many do we have missing in this country? What is the data? Where do they come from? I don't think we have that. Do we have excellently trained and capable forensic experts who such a matter? Look at what has happened in Kilifi right now. You need very, very meticulously well-trained people to actually give you a full report on what happened. And some of the some of the good forensic experts, for example, might even end up and find that even some of the people who have died and they were buried in those mass graves, the good forensic experts can actually even tell you whether they had been killed before they were buried and all that stuff. So these are the things that our country needs to prepare itself. We need to prepare ourselves for everything. You're asking Dibal, how does and these are things which used to make sense when I was a bit younger. How does somebody buy an 800-acre piece of land in a region, and yet nobody knows how much money was used, where did that money come from, whether it was a legitimate business deal, whether that land was confiscated, whether that was government land which was a forest? If you ask that information, chances are nobody will give it to you. When you come to how does somebody go and open a church in a forest, and it doesn't raise any concerns?
Indeed.
In fact, for me, I wanted to say, Mheshimiwa, that I have really congratulated Mheshimiwa Aisha Jumwa, because she was the first one to raise the red flag, and yet even as a politician, the administration never gave her the support. And most probably you might find because of this politics of ours, by that time Jomo had gone to the UDA side. So because of our politics, you see, this is again how our politics becomes bad. It becomes weaponized. And yet she was courageous enough to actually raise the issues of this man. And I think for me, Mheshimiwa Muli has raised it that let us as politicians begin to deal with these issues honestly and legitimately. If we want to be held to account, let us also hold our churches to account. If we want to hold the government into account, let us make sure that everybody in our republic is held to account. I think for me, that is how this country will move forward. Because where we are right now, I feel a strong sense of dysfunctionality. That you are a government, that such events are taking place, and this is not the only church. I mean, you've been seeing clips where there's this guy who's slapping people in the church, telling them why you don't marry. I mean, it's amazing. Some of these things that you are looking at. I mean, I watch the other videos from Nigeria. I watch from South Africa. You know, South Africa was at this other crazy head who had opened a church in South Africa, who was telling people to do unimaginable things, you know. And you have 10,000 people going to worship on a Sunday with him. And you can see that every single thing this guy is doing is basically a con.
If you allow me to quip in Dibal, you see, the question that I still ask myself about this Pastor Paul Ndenge Mackenzie is this. You know, security agencies put someone on the radar, and they're checking him all the time to see what is he doing. You know, a red flag had been up on Paul Mackenzie
For some time.
For some time. His TV had been pulled down because of the content of his TV station. So it was pulled down. Meaning this guy, the red flag was still on. He operates this church in Malindi, and there are issues with it. The red flag is still on. Security agents would have put this pastor on the radar, such that now when he moved to Shakahola, they should have had at least one person on the intelligence following this guy. What is he doing? But you know, he was left off the radar. Paul Mackenzie has over 3-4 cases in court on controversial teachings before even this one, on the controversies of his activities. But then he was never put on the radar, such that now when he comes and performs this massacre, how do you have a church in the forest? You have a chief, you have an assistant chief, you have police, you have intelligence, you have everybody. And they know this guy, Paul Mackenzie, is a controversial person. He has moved his church 3 locations because he's running away from scrutiny. Now he has taken the church to the forest. Wouldn't that have been something that raises people's red flag and say, what is happening? Where is he all of a sudden getting this money? Because if you read some of the stories, and I liked what the DCI said the other day, said some of the people have died out of starvation. But there is possible that others died of strangulation.
Yes.
Were they trying to escape?
Yes. Some of the children died out of strangulation. Now, I was in one of my mtars, I was doing my politics, and someone said, you know, there's a church here, that people go there and the pastor holds their throats and pours water on them in their mouth as he holds his throat, as he says, "Anatoa mapepo." You understand? And I spoke about it. I even talked to the security agency. I said, I don't want this church here. But they asked me, how don't you want that church there? The law allows them to have the church there. So that is some of the things that are red flags out of these pastors. And if you check this history of this pastor, you see actually he talks the same things that Pastor Paul Mackenzie talks about. So apart from that main church in Shakahola, he has very many other pastors who have established churches in other remote areas doing the same things as Paul Mackenzie. But that notwithstanding, we have, and I want to say this with a lot of it, we have a big church in Kilifi right now, one of the biggest churches in this country. A big city has been built in Kilifi as we speak by a pastor. And the amount of money there, the investment there probably is nearing over 700 million. The investment to go there. You see the investment. This is like a complete detachable city that has been established. The amount of money that goes into this pastor, I think he also runs a TV station there, is colossal. But why I say this with a lot of pain, today, patients are being removed from Kilifi County Hospital and being taken to that church to be prayed for. But they end up dying. And they go get buried. Why? Because these people have been convinced that if you take this guy to that church, he'll be prayed for and be healed. But the reverse happens. Children in critical conditions, pastor said, bring that child here. Remove him from the hospital, have power to heal that child. And they go to the hospital in Kilifi, they remove that child and take him to the church. He's prayed for, but the child dies and goes back and is buried. These are records the police should have, because you cannot bury a person who died elsewhere without a police abstract, police permit or abstract. But these people, this happens. Two, the same church, people who are supposed to take HIV/AIDS drugs, antivirus, have been stopped by a pastor. Actually, you're suffering from HIV, you're on antivirals, you're supposed to take these ones, but your pastor has told you, throw them away. When you throw them away, you'll come, I'll pour some water, I'll give you some water, you drink and you heal. This person dies. And when this person dies, who takes the responsibility? Because when you know a person is undergoing medication, and that person is undergoing medication, and you stop the medication and that person dies. Just like when a person is on a life support and you go and pull out the plug, that is murder. That is murder. Even if the person has said, please pull the plug, that is still murder. What happens to a pastor who tells somebody, stop taking medicine, stop taking antiretroviral drug because I will pray for you and you will heal, and this person dies? Who takes responsibility?
Indeed.
And these are activities that are in a church that politicians now, and big politicians, are saying, oh, this is a great guy. This guy held a big, what is it called? Crusade here in Nairobi another time, and it surprised everybody. The crowd that he pulled. Now, this crowd didn't come from Kilifi. This crowd came from all over the country. How many people are dying because of these controversial preachings from this pastor? And yet, we know a day will come and we'll have the same problem like this Mackenzie 10 years after. But more important, if you allow me, today children go to school, and they have bought handkerchiefs. In Kilifi, I say it. They bought handkerchiefs from the pastor. And they put it on their head as they are writing exams, because that handkerchief was bought from that pastor that has been prayed. It's a holy handkerchief. You put it on there. They buy some string and tie them on their hands as like the traditional amulets that people would wear. Now they are wearing an amulet that has come from a pastor, that this thing will protect you.
It's like a charm.
It's like a charm, and they wear those things. And this is a pastor. He's making a lot of money because he sells holy water. Kebs needs to come out and find out how holy is that water. How holy this water is.
It's coming from Israel.
Yes, probably this water could be poison. But it is being sold, and you know how someone has a factory to pack water. And the people come and buy that water, and you pay 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, You know, one day someone called me, a very senior person, works in an embassy, called me and said, hey, I want you to introduce me to this pastor. I said, why? I said, I have a problem.
This Pastor Mackenzie?
No, this other one.
Okay, this one we don't want to mention.
Yes. So he told me, I want you to introduce me to this pastor. I said, well, you see, I have a problem. I think people are planning to kill me. So I did this and this, and I've been told if I go there, I will get a prayer and get protection. But I need around 160,000.
Wow.
You know, sasa mimi hiyo pesa niko na nusu. Uniongezee ingine nusu alafu ni introduce so that I go there and yes, and get and this is a high level person, works in a diplomatic mission.
Well educated.
Well educated. You know,
or well schooled.
And this is not a story. Well schooled. But he believes that guy, if he goes there, these people who seem to be following
they will not kill him.
Will not kill her. Because he's gone there, he's paid 160,000. He's been prayed for and given probably a handkerchief for the water. And when he splashes the water, these people will know she'll become invisible. This is a church.
Aye.
Yes, and the people in Kilifi are saying the security agencies are seeing this. They know what is happening.
They know what is happening.
Yes. Today, if you sell water, if you sell water, even in the streets or to a supermarket, it has a KEBS stamp. How come a priest is allowed to sell
the water?
Without the KEBS stamp?
Yes.
Mheshimiwa, the other point I wanted to bring on board, Dibal, that and this comes out after you've said what you've said.
Yes.
We have been concentrating on radicalization of the Muslim society, Muslim community in Kenya.
In fact, I wanted just to latch on before you go on, because looking at what we have on the screen there, yesterday the state launched the manual to fight violent extremism. Do they need now to relook at it? Because it says the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection has launched a training curriculum and a manual on preventing and countering violent extremism for children officers. Cabinet Secretary Florence Bore said the launch will go a long way in building the capacity of children officers to identify, prevent, respond, and counter violent extremism among children. And speaking in Nairobi yesterday during the launch, Bore said the project encompasses preventing violent extremism through rehabilitation, vocational training, and social integration for children in conflict.
They will have to review.
They'll have to review this. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
If you're going to have children who are going to be in Mackenzie's church and they are not violent, how are you going to use the law to begin getting them so that you can deprogram them? The facts are that the government, because it's our main agency, must begin to relook where we are. First of all, most of the people, and this is my experience, and I hope I'm right, and as I keep saying, Dibal, sometimes let's just say the truth. Our people are rushing to these prosperity churches because people have become destitute.
What hope?
Because of our mismanagement of our politics, of the mismanagement of our economic growth and development. And people who are joining cults because they need an exit strategy. And this exit strategy they're given from such religions are basically an exit strategy which is laced and colored and set up with religion as the background. And it is a very easy strategy to buy. Why? Because our people have reached a stage where they have no food. Some of them have got no money. Some of them, I mean, if you look at, for example, how many you saw this picture you've just put here on the screen. This is a young lady. Look at her. Chances are the young lady never went to school beyond a certain school. Chances are she has no home. She has no husband. She has now a child. And here she gets this man in the forest who's telling her, you come, we will accommodate you, we will provide you where to stay, we have enough food in this place. Why would you even want to listen to anybody else? And these children who are in these religions, unless we are careful, all right? You hear Mheshimiwa Abaya, what has he said? These kids are now having handkerchiefs.
Yes.
These kids are now beginning to learn the language of that religion. What happens when the day reaches and these kids now become the mercenaries?
Yes.
Where their church leader is going to arm himself, arm these children, like it happened in several places in the US, and these guys are going to come up and say, we are going to start fighting. What are we going to do? So my honest observation is, I think President Ruto has got a lot of load in his hands right now. But I think he needs to set up a task force to look at this religion thing, make sure we get guidelines, talk to the Attorney General, make sure we pick the best practices. There's a lot of work that Rwanda has done.
Yes.
This nonsense doesn't happen in Rwanda. Why is it that Rwanda has come up with regulations of the church and nobody is making noise about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me come to Obaura because, first of all, I needed just to ask critical questions because I raised the issue of a coroner.
Yes.
And who is a coroner? Because we have the National Coroners Act in place.
Yes.
And for the just benefit of the public, who is a coroner? A coroner is a qualified person or official, if we just take it in full, whose duty is to investigate the cause of any death occurring due to a natural cause. He, she will generally not be involved, it says, where a person died from some natural illness or disease for which was being treated. And it goes to show also the functions, may just take it in full, please. The function of a national coroner service are to, one, coordinate coroner service throughout the country. Throughout the country. Ensure efficient delivery of functions and services of the service. Ensure that all deaths which the service has jurisdiction to conduct an investigation on are properly investigated and in a timely manner. Monitor and evaluate investigation of deaths by the service and issue guidelines to other coroners to assist them in the performance of their function. It goes, how is a coroner service organized? The Act, of course, this is in part to establish the National Coroners Service. This is an independent corporate body comprising of a coroner general. This is a word I was looking for. The coroner general. We should be having a coroner general now. Yes. Who's overseeing what is happening in Shakahola. And the regional coroners and other staff appointed by Public Service Commission for proper and efficient discharge of functions of the service. And this comes to the question of where you're asking that we are woefully inadequate, we need the FBI with the forensics. I think also the government dedicated a lot of forensic investigation apparatus that was dedicated there. I remember the President Ruto or during the Jubilee administration actually coming up with this particular forensic audit. Why don't we have a coroner general right now? We have the Act who will be overseeing this, and these issues, if was taken from the county, it will be the coroner general as function or the regional coroners in the counties also overseeing this.
I think the problem we have is because maybe people feel that that is not a very important function to populate the human resource with. And I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek because...
But we have an act itself.
Yeah. I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek because it's not something that would attract attention with regards to it being a matter of concern, how people died and what have you. I think what people are used to is the chief government pathologist, because that's the person they hear even in news that he's supposed to do, he's a mortician, basically, trying to see what caused death. And maybe it's also a good example to...
But you need to read the Act itself, because the requisite of requirement of the Coroner General is just as the pathologist himself.
Yeah, but for every Act of Parliament has to have champions, people who breathe life into it and push it. I don't know when it was enacted, but I'm sure it must be...
In 2017.
It must be an old act that was revised in 2017, but it's not really...
It's not an old act. This is a new act. This is not an old act. I've actually been seeing the genesis of this Coroner's Act since around 2011, when the discussions began on why we need a Coroner's Act in this country.
Yeah,
and this was coming in tandem with the police reforms as well.
Yes, I think it's something that can be looked into, but I'm sure there must be some regime that existed before the advent of this act. But let me also comment and say that over and above that act being in place, the whole issue is about our belief system. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes back, I had this friend of mine, name withheld. He is totally blind. And he told me that I take him to a certain pastor who was operating around Babadogo area. because he wanted to see. And when we went to that church, there were claims of people saying that they had been healed of HIV and AIDS. And so when it came to him, he actually prayed. Of course, my guy never saw. He still doesn't see even to date. But he had been led to believe that his blindness can actually be cured by an individual who should have some supernatural powers. And this individual also was televised as having received guns from erstwhile criminals who are surrendering the guns to him. Why am I trying to talk about this? Because we have actually been led to believe that there is an easy way out of our problems, and that is actually justifiable, and we've actually without any act of benefit. But if then you tell people that if they don't go to hospital, they are going to be healed, I think even those doctors they also pray to the same God, and they want to succeed in their tool in their area of specialization. And you know, the Bible also is very clear. It says faith without action is dead, really. So I think just to believe and what have you, I mean, we are sure that Jesus Christ, from what we read in the Bible and our faith, that he healed people. But by the end of the day, it just can't happen just like that. I mean, it's not literal. It's not, I mean, these people who claim to have more than the powers of a human being, normally, I mean, we have to question why they're doing this. And there's a very thin line between what is spiritual, what is physical, really. And that may not be fully understandable to human beings. Of course, we are spiritual people, and we connect to our God. But it's also good to have reason, because the same God who created us, in a spiritual way, also gave us reason to see, for example, this does not actually make sense. But the issue is about brainwashing. I don't know whether there can be any regulation that would stop people from believing that which is not true. But certainly, what can happen at the BAL is to actually make sure that such people do not actually operate without any form of oversight. They do not actually just do unfettered and unashamed. I mean, that kind of thing. I think that is the one thing that we can actually do, so, because you'll find so many people who are vulnerable as a result of the fact that maybe they are not doing well economically, maybe they are having this and that problem. They will always be such kind of people. So it is a responsibility of the regulatory authorities to do so. But we have also to be very bold to take it as a political question. That despite the hue and cry that may come from certain quarters, maybe this is a wake-up call, the BAL, that we should now put in place these regulations, and that it should not just be another area of political contestation, just because we would want to settle certain political scores based on the grandstanding that may happen at that point in time. Because that way then, we who are leaders are also protecting our electorate and our followers from this kind of manipulation. And it also gives us an easy way, because you see now, if then you can only be subdued by the fact that somebody has got a huge following, and that's the only way then you can get into power. I think sometimes it takes very bold leaders to stand up for what is right. But I hear you when you talk about the coroner's act. I am not very certain, and I stand guided, that even if there were such people to do the kind of work, whether they will not be coming too late, because right now they may look at
not in this instance, because if we may hark you back where the genesis of the Coroner's Act began, was you remember Mercy Kaino?
Yes.
Do you remember the story of Mercy Kaino, the university student that was run over, and we had also a governor who was involved in this particular story, and the families they felt that because it's a powerful politician involved in this particular, we may not really get justice, and how that particular case was really long drawn. It took a long protracted time. Even up to today, we don't know who killed Mercy Kaino. And so even the tampering, handling the bodies itself, I think that became question. How do you transfer the body from the same crime to the mortuary without even investigation being done around it, or maybe just securing the crime scene, as it were? Was it dumped on the road? Was the body also, was she killed in the house where the story was? This is where it actually began. Because when I look at this act, I think it really will save us, because I think this will bring about, and you the legislators who are here, all of you, this is a prime time now to actually ask in the National Assembly why don't we have a coroner general in the country? Because this has tapered off since 2017. Who now will have really come in handy to make sure if there were cases of deaths being reported,
yes,
the coroner will have been investigating how these people were disappearing since 2017. 2016.
They'll be able to have a database.
They'll be able to have a database, yes, so that we can actually begin an investigation and detect if this particular act was, well, it was enacted in 2017. So if there are disappearances and you have all these cases, then they begin a forensic audit and investigation what is really happening. Can you allow me just to take a short break and then we circle back with you? I know also Maura will be just leaving momentarily. Yes, but on the other side of the break, you'll give us just your parting shot. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here on Morning Prime. Don't go away.